Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Fall FedEx Worldwide Technologies Initial Research Show. Hopefully you've had a good couple of weeks. Your Zozo went much better than mine. Mine was a complete disaster. Even though I was pretty high on Colin Morikawa, I was also extremely high on Keith Mitchell. Most of my core, Nate Lashley, most of my core plays just did not play well. It was a very, very poor showing for yours truly. So hopefully you had much better success than I did, and that your gambling adventures and gambling endeavors have went better than mine recently, whether that has been in fantasy football, perhaps you were playing some DFS on baseball, or maybe you have a Rangers or Diamondbacks outright ticket. That'd be a pretty solid hit considering what their odds were at the beginning of the year. So want to hear from you all in that regard, but we are focused on the Worldwide Technologies Championship this week and a brand new course from a person you might have heard before. So let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. It has all of the tools that you need to make the optimal lineups at your disposal. So again, go check out FantasyNational.com. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my Twitter or X and Instagram, where I normally post research around prior winners for the PGA Tour. I'm going to try to have something for tomorrow, but with this being a brand new course, it might be some generalized research on my end. But if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site, X or Instagram. X is also where I post my betting cards every week on the PGA Tour. That'll be no different. That'll come out this Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the weekly wagers that I make for the PGA Tour, give me a follow over at X as well. And then Gabe's X handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. Highly suggest that you go subscribe to that article. It is free to do so. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat after calls on Wednesday evenings as we continue the DFS talk over in his Substack chat. So go show Gabe some support. Follow him over on social media and subscribe to that article. Again, it's free to do so. Lastly, we're live. Chat's open. Again, I want to hear from you all. How was your Zozo? How have your wagering endeavors gone? Are you looking forward to this new course? What do you know of it? Who do you think has the early edge? And then perhaps with some big sporting events coming this week, if you want to jump in chat and talk a little bit about that, the World Series, perhaps the Breeders' Cup, whatever you would like to talk about. So jump in chat. Would love to hear from you all. So let's do our initial research for the 2023 Fall FedEx Worldwide Technologies Championship. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. This is what used to be called the Mayakoba. Usually played at El Camaleon on the eastern shore of the Atlantic Ocean or in Mexico. A brand new course this year. We are on the complete opposite side of the country. We are actually on the peninsula next to the Gulf of California. We are not necessarily close to Vedanta and Puerto Vallarta, but we are on the actual peninsula down at the very, very bottom southwest corner of that peninsula in Cabo San Lucas. We are at El Cardenal at Diamante. And the most notable aspect of this course, as I zoom in for you all, you will see the course architect. You may have heard of this person. He's fairly famous. It's Eldrick Woods. That's right. This is a Tiger Woods design. This is a ocean or coastal resort style course. There is not a whole lot of information out there beyond what is here on the GCSAA. I do have a few notes about it, but not a whole lot. But again, the biggest thing to note for El Cardinal is this is a Tiger Woods design. This is his first design having been seen on the PGA Tour. Some notable aspects of El Cardinal. It is a par 72 measuring at 7,452 yards. So a little bit on the longer end, but again, Vedanta is about 7,600 yards, and it plays very, very easy. So I would expect some low scoring this week. This does not feel like a very, very difficult course, and we'll discuss why a little bit throughout the show. You see the stimp meter reading 11 to 12. Most of the time that's pretty average on the PGA Tour. That might be a little bit fast by Paspalum standards because of the amount of wind that generally comes into play at events that have Paspalum. You think of the Corrales. You think of Cocoa Beach and the Puerto Rico Open. Again, Mayakoba has had some wind in the past. So if the stimp actually does get to 12, we'll see some Paspalum putting speeds that probably haven't been seen before. And of course, we'll update the forecast starting tomorrow and moving into Wednesday. But at least by official yardage or raw yardage, 7,452, a long course. Not sure I'm going to be looking at that because I'm sure this is going to play much shorter. Some course statistics and some more specifics around El Cardinal. The average green size, 8,300 square feet. These are massive greens here at El Cardinal. 97 acres of fairway. But another interesting note here, 0 acres of rough. These fairways run straight to the penalty areas, the dense foresting or cabbage, cacti, jungle that determines kind of the boundaries of this course. No rough. So these fairways are going to be extremely, extremely easy to hit. Average fairway width in the landing areas are 60 yards wide. That is sometimes triple the amount of what you see, as the average is generally around 25, maybe 26, 28 or so yards wide in landing areas. Sometimes can get pretty narrow, maybe into the 20 to 22 range if you're talking maybe Torrey Pines. So extremely forgiving and large fairways here. 48 bunkers, but the key thing with these that I have seen is that these are very deep and look like they could be somewhat difficult to play out of if you were in the wrong spot in these bunkers. Only one hole with water in play at El Cardinal, as you see that there. The greens, as we talked about, they are platinum Paspalum, and we are on platinum Paspalum throughout the entire course. Fairways, greens, approaches, everything is platinum Paspalum. Now, we don't have a lot of Paspalum data in Fantasy National. We have a little bit, so we'll definitely be scrutinizing that all week. What I can tell you is that from the GCSAA, the only other course that lists the specific Paspalum that it has is the Corrales, and it has supreme Paspalum on the greens. So not an identical match, but certainly close enough. We'll be wanting to look at some putting statistics more than likely tomorrow in the Data Dive show around some putting, if we can get our hands on some putting, or probably just more than likely strokes gained total at these Paspalum courses. Now, platinum Paspalum is seen in the fairways at the RSM. So if you are a big advocate of similar grass types for fairways, then you'll want to look at some RSM data, as these are the same grass types that is seen at the RSM. Again, 60 yards wide fairways at the landing areas, so extremely, extremely forgiving, but no rough. Absolutely zero rough, so the fairways will run straight to the penalty areas, the jungle, cacti, wildlife that kind of boundaries each hole. So there's a look at El Cardinal from a GCSAA tournament fact sheet, a par 72 that measures 7,452 yards, but I'm thinking it's going to play a little bit shorter than that, and I'll explain why when we get into some detail here. Perhaps some fast paspalum, which I don't think we have seen, considering most paspalum courses are held in windy climates. Again, the Corrales, the Puerto Rico, they generally have a lot of wind, so they have to keep their green speeds down. Could get some fast paspalum. Very, very large greens, enormous greens here, enormous fairways. The quote from Tiger that I have seen is that he wanted to design this course for the quote weekend warrior. So I imagine when professionals get on this course, it's going to be pretty darn easy. And again, the distinguishing feature for El Cardinal, Mr. Eldrick Woods, is your golf architect. Okay, with that, we normally go to Fantasy National, but because this is a brand new course that has not been seen before, I'm going to take you to Pro Visualizer. El Cardinal at Diamante. You can see Pro Visualizer lists it at 7,473 yards, so slightly longer, but again, very, very close. So we're still looking at this roughly 7,450 yard course here. You've got 4 par 5s, 4 par 3s, the customary 2 5s and 2 3s on each 9. But we're going to go through each hole here. And let's take a look at El Cardinal from a Pro Visualizer standpoint. So I'm actually going to close out this portion here, as that takes a lot on the PC. Okay, let's see if we can't zoom in just a little bit here. Okay, hole number 1, a pretty simple looking dogleg left par 5, and this is going to be a common theme here. Fairly short par 5. My big head's in the way. 545 at Pro Visualizer. But you see, there doesn't look to be any trouble or anything that would prevent a player, especially a professional, from attacking this green in 2. And we're going to see that for all of these par 5s. So looking like a very, very scoreable, easy opening hole here at El Cardinal. We move to hole 2. The length of the course comes into these par 5s. Your first par 3, the second hole, 205 on the scorecard. Again, massive greens, no water except for one hole in the course. We'll get to that. Protected by a deep bunker in front of this massive green. But a long par 3 second here at 205. The one hole with water in play, hole 3, and for the professionals, it is not in play. For me, no comment. But Pro Visualizer has this listed at 354 yards. This is setting up a 240-yard drive to set up a wedge. My guess is that this is going to be, and I'm going to call it semi-drivable. My understanding is that there is steep runoff, or false front, if you will, at the front of this green, is my understanding. So it's going to take a very, very massive drive to drive this green, but I'm not going to say it's impossible, especially if the course is firm. I don't think they have had a lot of rain, but again, we will check the forecast leading up to the tournament starting tomorrow. So a semi-drivable par 4 third here. But another thing that Tiger mentioned is that he wanted to design a course that has multiple angles of attack, meaning if a player's strength is driving the golf ball, then you can attack a lot of these par 4s and or a couple of these par 4s and drive the greens, whereas the shorter hitters still have the opportunity to hit a quality iron off the tee and then set themselves up with a wedge if they think that's their best way to attack a hole. So multiple ways to approach this golf course is the way Tiger also mentioned in a quote that I have seen. But a semi-drivable par 4 here, the third, measuring at 353 yards, then and the only hole with water in play for the professionals. It's not really in play. Hole 4, our first longer par 4, 491 yards, but again, you see the massive amount of fairway that is available to these players. Does narrow a little bit further. My guess is going to be that is probably at 350. I don't think many players will be able to get to that, but again, if the course is firm, some of the bigger hitters might have to worry about this right here. But generous fairway into a green that is, again, only protected by a very steep, small but steep bunker here to the right. Hole 5, again, another dogleg right par 4, about a 300-yard drive, sets up a 150-yard approach that this is, and I forget the wording that this is kind of like a barranca. Think of the holes around Pebble Beach, especially hole 2 per se. The Genesis has a few barrancas that run through the course there. But my understanding is that these are, absolutely unplayable. It is its native area, just not playable. So that is what is protecting the green here on the right. Is that I'm going to call it a barranca. There's a specific term that is in Spanish, and I would butcher that 10 ways from Sunday, so I'm not even going to try. But a short-ish par 4, 445 yards. Sets up a short iron into a green protected by that barranca. Hole 6, your second par 5. Again, a massively long bunker protecting the front of this green, but otherwise nothing that would prevent a player from attacking this green in 2. And I believe most professionals are going to be confident enough in their sand play that they will chance going for this green in 2. This is the longest hole on the course, 604 yards, 300 off the tee, meaning a 220 second shot would set up a very short wedge. Again, I imagine most professionals will give this par 5 a go in 2. Those that don't are looking at a very, very short wedge. But again, nothing to prevent the player from attacking this par 5 except for this massively long bunker that protects the front of this green. Hole 7, very straightforward, 503-yard par 4, so a long par 4, but very, very straightforward. This bunker is not in play for the professionals. This bunker probably is not in play for many professionals unless they are so extremely wayward that it brings them into it. But a simple looking but long par 4 at 503 yards. Hole 8, 486. Again, setting up a tee shot that's about 290 here The more aggressive a player gets, the more they might be bringing this Barranca into play to the right. But if they push it further, you're going to be setting yourself up for a much shorter wedge to a 3-leaf clover designed looking green that's got a couple of bunkers protecting it. But another thing that I want you to notice as we go through this, the multiple pin placements that could be on these greens you see here. I mean, I can see easily 7 different placements, but let's just do, the obvious. You got one in the back right here. In fact, I'll zoom in. I don't think we're going to get too much in terms of detail as far as contouring, although my understanding is that these greens do have some amount of contouring to them. But even, say this green, you can have a hole or a pin location in the back right, front middle, perhaps back left and middle. So multiple pin placements available here at El Cardinal. I believe that's the depth that we had before. So there's hole 8, slight dogleg right par 4, 486. The par 3 ninth, 204 yards. So both par 3s on the front 9 measure over 200 yards, 205 and 204. Again, massive greens, and this Barranca slash what looks like it could be that, or maybe turns into a bunker near the green, protecting it. But iron play seemingly going to be pretty darn important due to just the sheer size of these greens. We move to the back 9 now. Par 4 10th, very short, 357 yard par 4. Again, I'm going to say semi-drivable. If professionals push it a little bit too much with their layup, they could find some trouble here with these bunkers, these fairway bunkers. But nothing other than this short or small but steep bunker protects the green. So I imagine majority of professionals, you will either end up in this bunker or somewhere out in here with a 3-wood, setting themselves up for a straightforward pitch if the pin is anywhere on the left half of that green. So again, I'm going to call it semi-drivable par 4 here. The par 4 10th at 357. The 11th, 193 yard par 3. One of the more protected greens we've seen so far, with a massive bunker protecting the front and left, and a pot, or I call it a pot bunker, a very small bunker protecting back right. But 193 yard par 3 11th. The 12th, let's see if I can come this way just a little bit. Again, straightforward par 4, only 411 yards, setting up probably a 3-wood off the tee with a very, very, very short, wedge into a massive green that is not seemingly protected, but my guess is there are several contours, some runoffs, maybe a false front that protects that green. But a very short 411 yard par 4 12th. 13th, 476. Again, with this Barranca style unplayable native area protecting the green to the right. You see all the massive amount of width that is available in the landing zone here at El Cardinal. Very straightforward. Par 4, dogleg right, 476. The par 5 14th. Again, attackable in 2. The only difference with this par 5 is that you do have some native area that creeps somewhat close, at least compared to other holes. Relatively close on this hole, especially long and left. And you see a very long but skinny green. So I imagine anything in the back here would probably give professionals maybe some caution to maybe not attack this in 2, but certainly distance-wise, it's reachable. 580 on this par 5 with a Barranca that splits the fairway in 2. So again, another attackable par 5. Perhaps, maybe not if the pin is in the far back reaches of this green, due to some trouble that creeps in very close to the back of the green. The par 4 15th, again, very straightforward, slight dogleg left, massive green, unprotected by bunkers. My guess is that it is going to be steep runoffs, maybe elevated a little bit, contouring of the greens. Only 461 yards, the par 4 15th. The last par 3 on El Cardinal is a very short 154 yard par 3. Again, you see just the massive green, which is common throughout El Cardinal. 154 yard par 3, your final par 3 of your round if you start on hole 1. Hole 17, slight dogleg left, par 4, massive. I mean, this might be the most massive landing zone you have to one of if not the most protected greens on the property. Bunkers protecting front left all the way left, and probably some runoff in the back on 17, but otherwise fairly straightforward. Slight dogleg left, par 4, 467 yards, the penultimate hole. And then finally, the tournament is going to have a lot of fireworks come Sunday, would be my guess, if it is a close tournament, because the 18th is a very short par 5, 537 yard par 5. Now, it does look like there is a little bit of strategy here off the tee, in the sense that you can play to this wider area or larger area with a 3-wood, or maybe you can try and push the bunkers with driver. If you push driver, you're obviously going to be with a much shorter club to get to this green in 2. But even so, even with the 3-wood and the layup, you see it's a 37-yard approach shot, which Pro Visualizer always sets up par 5s as 3-shot holes. So very, very short par 5 to end it, that I imagine we could see some eagles on 18, would be my guess. So there's a look at El Cardinal from Pro Visualizer. Again, only one hole with water in play. For the professionals, it's not really in play. These greens are massive, many different pin placements. Approach is going to be key. The proximity is probably going to be key with the massive greens that they have. Fairways are not going to be something that I think we're going to want to look at. These fairways are just completely forgiving. There's no rough on the course. Don't think we want to look at greens in regulation either, because of the size of these greens. So with that, before we go to Fantasy National, and we will definitely go to Fantasy National, let me bring up the new course template that I have here. We just looked at this in Pro Visualizer, but if you want to see the chart that is normally in Fantasy National, this is what we have for El Cardinal. The par 3s, got one that's pretty short at 154, one that is 193 yards, so it is pushing that 200 boundary very easily, and then two that are 204 and 205. So a lot of par 3s in that 200 yard range. So I imagine that's probably a range we're going to want to look at throughout this week. Your par 4s, the two semi-drivable par 4s that fall from 350 to 400. You do have two short par 4s, 400 to 450, but the majority of the holes here at El Cardinal 450 to 500. 5 of your 10, half of your par 4s, measure 450 to 500. And we do have an extremely long 503-yard par 4. One of those. For your par 5s, I'll swivel out of the way here. The turn, actually, if you were to play the back 9, hole 18 and hole 1. So especially for you showdown players, that is probably something that you're going to want to really facilitate in your lineups this week. Target players that are teeing off on the back 9 on Thursday and Friday, starting on hole 10, because you get the very short 537-yard par 5 18th, and then the very short 545 par 5 first, back-to-back holes. So really, two, what I would think, pretty darn good eagle chances back-to-back. So a big advantage that I see for the players that are starting on hole 10 each day. So something to definitely think about as you think about your lineups and when the tee times come out later for your Thursday and Friday showdown rounds. And then one par 5 from 550 to 600, and then one par 5 that is measuring at 604 on the scorecard. So there's a look at the whole composition chart from Pro Visualizer for El Cardinal. And if we go to the estimated proximities, again, all 4 of the par 5s were set up as true 3-shot par 5s. I don't think any of these par 5s, with the exception of the first par 5 on the back 9, I believe it was hole 14, I don't think any of those are going to play as true 3-shotters. I still think the 600-yarder is going to be attackable in 2, just because of the lack of protection that's around that green. So me personally, I would move all 4 of these 75 to 100 approaches into the 200 plus to account for the par 5s being attacked in 2. Pro Visualizer estimated 3 100 to 125 yard approach shots. 2 of these are the semi-drivable par 4s that the big hitters, say a Ludwig Aubert, a Luke List, those types of players will probably try to drive that green, or those 2 greens. So you can easily see those 2 approaches coming off of, or coming out of this subset. So not too many 100 to 125 yard approaches, only 125 to 150, couple from 150 to 175, but just due to the fact that there are so many 450 to 500 yard par 4s here, the majority of approach shots, my guess, are going to come from 175 to 200 and the 200 plus if you want to account for the par 5s. So in terms of proximity, if you want to look at a specific range early on in your research, I'm thinking the longer ends of the proximity range, and I'm looking at total procs more so. But there's a look at the estimated proximity per Pro Visualizer, the substitute chart for the approach shot distribution from Fantasy National. So I'll have that again tomorrow for you all for a quick reference. But with that, now we'll go to Fantasy National, and we'll take a look at just a little bit tonight, a little bit of a shorter show again with a brand new course. We're not going to have any course data, so there's no comparison course. There's no course history. In fact, if I click the course breakdown, so they still have El Camaleon, which is Mayakoba. So you don't want to take a look at that. We won't have anything in terms of tournament history. Again, all of these strokes gained are from El Camaleon, the Mayakoba, and we won't have any past course conditions for all of it being El Camaleon. So we're actually going to end the show off a little bit, or looking at a few of these metrics here in Fantasy National. But some of the names that are in the tournament this week, again, the aforementioned Ludwig Aubert, Sahith Theegala, Luke List, the winner of the Sanderson Farms. You've got Cam Young, Emiliano Grillo, but mostly this is a pretty underwhelming field. Again, Mayakoba was won back-to-back years by Victor Hovland. Mayakoba sometimes attracted a couple of bigger names. This is a pretty weak field by comparison standards. Not too dissimilar from what we've seen for the majority of the FedEx fall. And you see the past 36 rounds, so long as the rounds have been in this calendar year, our top performers have been Lucas Glover and the tear that he was on at the end of the PGA Tour season last season. Ludwig Aubert, Jaeger, Bo Hossler, who's been playing very well lately, Svensson, Doug Gim, Theegala, List, JJ Spawn, Davis Thompson. Those are your top 10 in terms of total performance. I do think strokes gained approach is going to be pretty darn big deal this week. So your top strokes gained approach players: Lucas Glover, Mark Hubbard, Sam Ryder, Kevin Roy, Doug Gim, Ryan Moore, Ches Reavie, Kevin Streelman, Russell Knox, and Andrew Putnam. But the big thing, and one of the bigger takeaways, at least early on statistically, we'll take a look at past Palom. And we won't have a whole lot of data here. In fact, 12 rounds is the most that we have, and the only putting it data that we have is from Vedanta. Now you see the Corrales, Puerto Rico. There are tournaments on the PGA Tour somewhat consistently with past Palom, but the only putting data we're going to have is from Vedanta. So what I'm going to do, I'll bring this back out to January of 2022. We'll take a look at a couple of different things here. But again, mostly we're just going to be looking at the Vedanta Mexico Open for putting. So your top putters at courses we have been able to gather the statistics. Essentially, the top putters at Vedanta on past Palom: Davis Riley, Brandon Wu, Cameron Champ, Ben Taylor, Kelly Craft, Akshay Bhatia, Aaron Baddeley, Emiliano Grillo, Ben Griffin, and Hankley Biota. Again, there are several other tournaments that have past Palom data, but these players have put Vedanta, specifically Vedanta, the best. That is the only course that we have gotten putting statistics for. And you see, majority of those top 10 have played very well on past Palom courses in general. Davis Riley, 8th. Brandon Wu's your number 1 past Palom total performer. Champ is 3rd. So a better understanding, my guess, for this week, and the way I'm approaching it so far early this week, our top total performers on past Palom courses. Putting and sure is a part of it, but because Vedanta is the only place we have putting statistics, we're going to take a bigger picture view, in my estimation, or my thinking is we're going to take a bigger picture view, look at total performers on past Palom. Your top performers on courses with past Palom greens in the past close to 2 years, since the beginning of 2022: Brandon Wu, Akshay Bhatia, Cameron Champ, Harry Hall, Nate Lashley, Michael Kim, Carson Young, Davis Riley, Thomas Detry, David Lipsky, and Chad Ramey. Just for the viewers' information, the courses that are making up this set of data, there are only 3. It says Accordia. That's not actually true. We know Accordia has bent greens. So the 3 courses that are making up this subset of data, actually 4 courses: Cocoa Beach, which is the host of the Puerto Rico Open. We have Corrales, obviously the host of the Corrales Punta Cana Championship. Where we typically are this week, El Camaleon, the former host of the Mayakoba and Worldwide Technologies, and Vedanta, the host of the Mexico Open the past 2 years. Those are the 4 courses that have paspalum greens that have been on the PGA Tour the past 2 years. So that's where this data is coming from, just for your all's information. Okay, so with that, we can take a look at a couple of other things perhaps. We'll take a look at some long course data. Again, I don't think I'm going to put a whole lot of weight into that, if any. But if you are your top performers on courses that are long, looks like I'm going to have to keep it into 2022 just to make sure players have enough rounds. And a long course is defined as over 7,400 yards by Fantasy National standards. So your top performers on long courses the past 2 or so years: Michael Kim, Matt Kuchar, Nate Lashley, Chris Kirk, Nico Echeverria, Akshay Bhatia, Harry Hall, JJ Spawn, Cameron Young, and Jimmy Walker. So several of these names here have piqued my interest due to where these players have won. So for example here, in terms of long courses, Nico Echeverria has 1 PGA Tour win. It was the Puerto Rico Open, a similar style golf course you would think to El Cardinal. When we were looking at total performance on paspalum, Chad Ramey, winner of Corrales last year. Matt Wallace, the winner of the Corrales this year. Cameron Champ. Brandon Wu. Brandon Wu has played Vedanta extremely well both years. So these names are making a lot of sense when we see especially the paspalum data, and for Puerto Rico and Corrales and Vedanta over 7,400. Otherwise, we'll take a look at a couple of other things just because it's been a shorter show, but I'm going to save a whole lot of the data for tomorrow. Let's take a look at proximity. I'm personally, at least early on this week, am going to be focused on total procs. So your total, or your best total procs performers in the field this week: Lucas Glover, Ryan Armour, Michael Kim, Ches Reavie, Charlie Hoffman, Russell Knox, Ludwig Aubert, Ryan Moore, Henrik Norlander, and JJ Spawn. For specific ranges of proximity, I would probably be looking 175 and 200 plus. Some notable names here: Lucas Glover, 9th and 22nd. Michael Kim, 6th and 19th. Ludwig Aubert, top 25 in both. Henrik Norlander, just outside the top 25 in both. JJ Spawn, just inside the top 25 in both. But probably the best player, specifically at the long approaches, is Austin Eckroat. You see he's 17th in total procs because he has not handled the 75 to 100 in particular very well, but he's been very, very good at 175 and 200 plus. So that's a name you probably want to keep in mind throughout this week, especially if you think the longer proximities are what you want to focus on. So there's that. I think we're going to end the show off tonight just looking at par 5s. These par 5s seem like they're attackable, seem like they're very scoreable. They're pretty evenly split, although we do have 2 that measure 500 to 550. But our top total par 5 performers in the field this week: Davis Thompson, Stefan Jaeger, Scott Harrington, Ludwig Aubert, Will Gordon, Eric Van Rooyen, Harry Hall, Ryan Gerard, Peter Quest, and JJ Spawn. All right, with that, I believe that's going to be the show tonight. Again, normally we take a look at some comparison course statistics, but this is a brand new course, so nothing to do there. We generally look at some historical performance for players at the tournament, at the course. Again, with it being brand new, we have nothing there. So, nothing to do in that regard tomorrow or tonight. But now for tomorrow, I'm going to try to have I will have some Vedanta putting stats. I'll have some total performance statistics at the various Paspalum courses. Those probably 3. I'll probably use Vedanta, Puerto Rico, and Corrales. Probably, even though Mayakoba is in fact in Mexico, I think it's a little bit different enough since it's a shorter course that I probably won't bring in that comparison data. But we'll take a look at what we can from these longer courses that have Paspalum data tomorrow in the Data Dive show. So that's going to do it for the show tonight. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the video, commenting, subscribing. Always appreciate it. Hopefully you've had a successful couple of weeks. Your Zozo went much, much better than mine. You had outright on Colin Morikawa. Hopefully your NLCS, ALCS, and World Series wagering and DFS has been going well. And fantasy football, of course, hopefully that is going well as well. If you've had success, reach out to me in the comments of the show or on social media. Would love to be able to shout out members of the community who have success. Again, thanks for all the support. For all of the wagers that you made 2 weeks ago for the Zozo, for all the DFS contests you played 2 weeks ago for the Zozo, for all of your wagers and contests in between, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.